All right, up next on the Millennial Sales Podcast, we have Morgan Buchanan. Morgan, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks. How are you doing?
I am doing great. It's second to last day of the quarter over here. So I'm doing as great as a sales rep can do when there's still a deal or two out there and 24 hours to get it in. So we're working on it.
Totally. I understand. And I appreciate you accommodating me at the end of the quarter. That's a big deal. So I feel really special.
Yeah. Well, anyone that if I get a DM from Zoe Hartsfield that's like, hey, you need to talk to this person, which doesn't happen very often, but when it does, like, I'll drop whatever to talk to that person. So I'm excited to have you on and hear your story.
Thank you. Hopefully I don't disappoint, but if Zoe gave me a vote of confidence, then I'm already feeling good. So
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about the journey a little bit. So you've been at Spekit for like 10-ish months now, coming up on a year?
Yep. So I joined in July of 2021 as an inbound SDR, and then I moved to outbound in January of this year.
And before that, you were ballet dancing for how many, like 15 years or some 20 years, some crazy number like that?
Yeah, it was 12 years. So
Okay,
you were
12
almost
years.
there. Yeah, so I was a ballet dancer for 12 years. And when the pandemic happened, Colorado Ballet pretty much ceased to exist. And it was really the first time that I had time and space to actually take a break. I had been dancing since I was 3, training professionally since I was 16, and had never taken that much time off. And what I realized is that I didn't want to do it anymore. And that was an incredibly shocking realization, because when you're dancing in a professional environment like that, it's a whole part of your identity. And especially if you've been doing it since you're very, very young, as I did. And so I first off started going to therapy to figure that out. And then I started brainstorming what I could do next, because typically the career path for a dancer is to go into teaching or some kind of like Pilates or yoga instruction or something like that. And I knew that I didn't want to do that. So while I was dancing, I had gotten my bachelor's degree online from CU in political science and a minor in international studies. And while I was dancing, I had done a couple of different internships through like with lobbyists at the state capitol. And I was actually a political canvasser for a while. So I knew that I didn't want to do that either, but I started thinking about other things that I had done and realized that I had kind of been this public face for Colorado Ballet. So ever since I joined the company when I was 18, I was asked to go and speak at events and talk to donors and do interviews and things like that. And in the process, I made a lot of connections with the donors. And so nonprofit development seemed like a natural fit for me. So I leveraged some connections and I started working in nonprofit development in, it was probably September 2020. And I quickly realized that while I enjoyed it, I wanted something different long-term. And so that's kind of the path from ballet, nonprofit development, and then into tech.
So what was it about ballet, like after all those years, did you just get burnt out, or when was the moment where you're just like, this isn't the path for me anymore?
Yeah, I was very, very burnt out, to the point where I didn't even realize how burnt out I was. And the fact that I was relieved when they canceled the rest of our season, when the pandemic hit, and I was relieved that there wasn't a start date for us to come back, that was a huge red flag for me. And in addition to that, I mean, there was a lot of, I would call it political turmoil in the ballet, as well as my body was starting to really hurt. And so I was taking, do you know Celebrex? It's for like people with arthritis. I was on like a huge dosage of Celebrex every day. And I was just thinking to myself, this isn't right. Like I shouldn't not be able to walk up and down stairs at age 29. That's not what I want for the rest of my life. And so all of that kind of combined made me realize that I needed to take a little bit of a deeper look as to what I wanted my path to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've heard a lot of stories, the same thing that you're mentioning with, other athletes that they play whatever sport or do whatever until, they're 30 or in their 20s or in their 30s, still super young people. And, that's your life from when you're 8 years old or whenever you start, 10 years old. And that's your identity. Right. And so it's like, okay, now I need to remove myself from, whatever that activity was, that sport was, and like, who the hell am I? And like, what am I going to do with the other, 60 years of my life?
Yeah.
And so it sounds like you kind of had that type of moment. And as you're kind of like trying different things, you're like, that doesn't feel right. That doesn't feel right. Like how did you actually get pushed to like tech sales of all things?
Yeah, so I was thinking about my career in nonprofit development. And what I was doing was I was reaching out to people and trying to get them interested enough in this organization to either take a Zoom meeting and learn more, or come in and take a tour of our facility, or get involved with one of our boards, or give money to the organization. And I really liked that like sales aspect of it. And so I have one of my good friends, Nicolette, works at Snowflake. And I was deep in an existential crisis trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And she and I went to go get a beer, and I was like, I have no idea. And tech is something for someone who spent the majority of their life not having to deal with stuff on a computer, like going into tech is extremely, extremely intimidating. And I didn't even think that it was really a possibility. And she's actually friends with Melanie, Spekit's CEO. And she said, hey, my friend is the CEO of this company. You should check it out. And I was like, yeah, I'll talk to them. I'll talk to anybody and we'll see. And I ended up really falling in love with the people that I interviewed with. And I could tell that it was just a really great culture. And so I decided to give it a shot.
Wow. That's cool. I mean, it's great to have that connection, and it's just like, sometimes it's like who and the opportunities come from there. And I was telling you before we started recording, I just was listening to Melanie on John Barros's podcast, and she was talking about, kind of like sometimes leaning away from like the million, things that are happening in the world. And like what she really leans into is like trying to, I'm paraphrasing, but like up level other women into leadership and, into sales and just like into power positions, I guess, in corporate America and in tech. And I'm just curious, like, I know you now, I know Zoe, I followed her, Melanie, like, what has that been like as someone that's breaking in and seeing such like a strong role model and knowing that that's like a passion of hers to help kind of build up from within too?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I feel very spoiled because I know that a lot of people who have been in tech, a lot of women who have been in tech for a long time have not had those role models and have not seen that it's possible. And so for me to just waltz right in and have this amazing CEO and all of these fantastic examples of diverse and female leadership within the organization, I feel very, very lucky. And it definitely, I think, has laid a good foundation for me to stay motivated and know that I have these female role models and mentors that I can reach out to.
Yeah. It's amazing. And I'm curious, like, so you've been competitively dancing for 12 years. You kind of go through this existential crisis. You obviously, in my mind, all of the skills that you would need as a competitive dancer or competitive anything will translate to sales. I mean, not the physical stuff, but just like the determination, the discipline, all of that. So did you pick it up relatively quickly and translate over? Or was it kind of awkward when you started picking up the phone, or what were like the first few weeks and months like?
Yeah, well, it was definitely awkward the first time I picked up the phone. I would say it's still a little awkward when I pick up the phone, but
Yeah.
I had my boss at the time and he's still with the organization, but he's an RVP now instead of in sales development. But he did a really, really great job of making sure that I felt comfortable. And I was also taught by the person who was doing inbound at the time. So I basically had someone holding my hand the whole time, which was really, really nice. And the great thing about jumping into an industry where you don't know anything is that you don't know what's good and what's bad. And so you just go out there and you do it. And I knew going into it that I couldn't be afraid of falling on my face. And I think that that has ended up serving me very, very well. Another thing that's really interesting is, and I think it's something that keeps me very engaged in the sales world, is the feedback culture that exists. And because dancing, you know, the majority of your time is spent in rehearsal, and for those 8 hours or however long it is, you're getting constant feedback. And it could be down to something as strange as your pinky toe is not in the right place. You need to fix where it is to make this position look good. And it's that detailed for 8 hours or however long it is. And so to be in an environment where giving and receiving constructive feedback is such a core part of the role, I think is something that just it comes really naturally to me. So that was something that was interesting.
Do you take, because I'm the exact opposite of that. Like I love like the high level stuff, but like when it comes to details, like, you know, I don't know, I just space out on a lot of that. Have you translated that part of like being so regimented about every little small detail into like what you do as a salesperson, and just like, I don't know, how you organize yourself or your time or anything like that?
Yeah, I've had to let go a lot.
Yeah.
And because I do tend to get bogged down in perfection, which I know does not exist, but I've had to let go and just accept the fact that it's not going to be perfect all the time. And I think I'm slowly becoming more of a big picture person as well.
Yeah. Because I think, you know, I took a dance class in college. So I think that's all I could say about that. But I played a lot of sports, you know, growing up and in college. And like there's a decent amount you can control in certain aspects of that. But in sales, there's just only so much you can. Like because you're dealing with someone else, like, and you can't force them to take a meeting, you can't force them to buy something. There's really only so much you can do. And so I do feel like kind of detaching from the outcome and like letting it be, so to say, in some regards, is like a healthy way to think about it. Because otherwise, I've been there where I just drive myself crazy because it's like, I need to do better. I need to book more meetings, close more deals. But it's like, well, if you focus less about that outcome and you just focus on like doing the right stuff, like it all tends to work out, at least in my experience.
Totally. Yeah. And I definitely am someone, when things are not going well, I can get it's like I get blinders on and I can't see outside of what this small and relatively insignificant thing is that I'm trying to fix is, if that makes sense. And so something that our leadership has done a really great job with is, if they see me getting like that, someone told me once, you were doing a lot better when you didn't give a fuck. And so how can you bring that back a little bit? And I mean, when I first joined, it's funny, I say I did the original cold FaceTime because I was a political canvasser in 2018. Yeah. And so like being a political canvasser in a purple state in a political climate that is incredibly tumultuous is the ultimate cold FaceTime. So when that trend started, I was like, yeah, I'll try it. Like, whatever. I don't have anything to lose. And it actually worked out in my favor.
As an SDR, you're saying, or as a political canvasser?
No, I tried it as an SDR.
Oh, and so it's working for you?
I mean, I tried it twice and I'm 2 for 2 with meetings booked.
We'll take it. Perfect score.
Yeah, I don't do it anymore though, but just while it was a thing on LinkedIn, I decided I'd try it. So
got you.
I forgot where I was going with that story, but what was your question? We can.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's okay.
I don't even remember what I asked either, but what I am curious about is, we were talking a little bit before about, you know, the transition from outside careers, as varied as they can be. Like, you know, my roommate was an accountant. My sister was a special ed teacher for a decade, and now both thriving in sales as well. And so I'd love to just hear, like, if there was people listening that were you a year ago, right? That like have like the idea that maybe they want to get into tech, they want to work remote, they want the opportunity, but don't really know where to start. Like where would you start? Like what would you tell yourself a year ago of where to start on something like that?
I think that I would try and look at some outside of the box skills that you have developed, because everyone has them. You just don't
Yeah.
always know what they are. So even while I was thinking about this podcast and writing down some of the things that I knew that I wanted to touch on, this whole new idea dawned on me. So when I was dancing, we were under a union contract. So I was employed for 34 weeks out of the year. For 18 of those weeks, I was unemployed. So I had to hustle and make money through whatever means possible, because during those 18 weeks, because I knew that I wasn't going to be getting a paycheck. And so I would try and find teaching gigs. I would find dance guesting things. I would really try hard to do focus groups and things like that, because I knew that I didn't want to just sit inside while I had that time off. I really wanted to take advantage of that time and travel. But what that did was it instilled this, I think, resilience in me, and this ability to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and get shit done. And because your life really depends on it. You want to have money, you want to do stuff. Money is choice, money is security. So looking at interesting things that maybe you have done in the past and trying to frame that in a way that matches whatever role you're trying to get into. Because another thing that was really concerning to me about getting into tech is up until last July, I had never looked at Salesforce. I had never used outreach. I had never once did I ever think that I would be selling a product that sits on top of these tools. And so, but you learn all of that. Like all of that will come in time. But I think it's more about the skills that you bring to the table. And I think a lot of teams too are looking for people who can really highlight the fact that they bring skills to the table that no one else on the team does.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like as I've done this podcast for so long, the amount of people that I've met that started in something so different from sales, and then, they were a chef or they were this or that, and then somehow wound up in this profession and then use those skills that no one else had to kind of like make it their own and make it their own story. There's tons of people like that. And I think on the tech side, it probably just seems more intimidating than it really is, because it's like, oh, like Salesforce, like what even is that? But like once you start using it, it's like, it's just like anything, it's not any harder than using Instagram or something, it's
Right.
it's just all the same. And I feel like if you have the foundational skills of, you mentioned resilience, you mentioned attention to detail, discipline, things like that, an ability to learn and be coachable. If you have those, it doesn't matter if you can't even spell Salesforce. Like that's so far off the radar. As long as you have some of those foundational pieces, you'll be successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
All right. I'd love to get tactical for a minute or two and hear, like, I see Spekit. I'm seeing Spekit all the time. I see you're all on LinkedIn. Like there's a lot of noise being made. I want to know what is booking meetings right now for the SDR team that I can steal.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm beating a dead horse when I say videos, but I think that the whole team really does a good job of utilizing video in their outreach. Whether that's, sending a thank you for connecting video on LinkedIn, that usually is what starts a conversation for me, especially because people do now recognize the Spekit brand on LinkedIn. So if I can send that extra video touch, putting a face to the name, that will typically initiate a conversation for me later on down the road. I also think that there's a big focus on trying those different things and what can you do to think outside the box to add to your outreach. And so when I first started, I knew that I didn't want to completely reinvent the wheel. So I took the sequences from the top performing rep and literally just copy pasted. And I was like, if it's working for her, it's going to work for me. And her name is Shalene. She's one of my really good friends, but she has this really, shout out Shalene. She has this really funny, like self-deprecating sense of humor. And so while that doesn't work for everyone, I figured that was close enough to my real voice that I could make it work. And so I started with that. And then through, all the LinkedIn tidbits and the webinars and things like that, I slowly edited them down until it sounded like me. And so doing that, trying different things like videos, as well as I call them extracurricular activities. Like I go to improv some Thursdays with like some of the growth AEs, and
Okay.
it's been so fun, and it's such a good exercise in thinking on your toes too.
How long have you been doing that for?
A couple months now. So a couple of us finally got up. So they have like a 2-hour long class, and then after that they have a improv jam.
Yeah.
And so we've been going to the class for a couple months now. And then a couple weeks ago, we got up the courage to go to the improv jam. And it was just a blast. It's like this little theater in downtown Denver, and they've got great drinks, and it was really fun.
That is cool. That's I actually heard, I don't know if you know who Ryan Serhant is. He was like he's a New York City real estate broker for like luxury things, and he was on some show, I forget what it's even called, but I had him on, and he was talking about how when he first started, he got into improv and tells people to do that. And it's always been on my list to like, oh, that sounds fun. First of all, it'd be fun, and second of all, definitely helps you with just like thinking on your toes, being creative, all of that. But I haven't gotten out there yet, so maybe that's the push that I need. Sounds like it's a good experience.
Yeah, I think so. And it really especially because I want to be an AE, and I know that thinking on your toes is something that's really an important skill to have. So continuing to hone that in a way that isn't just some sort of sales training or sales course or something like that, it brings a little bit more joy into it for me, which I'm all about. So
yeah. How about, so for the LinkedIn video, I want to get a little bit deeper into that. So if I'm a prospect, I'd love to know, like, first, if you're sending the connection request, do you have a message in there first, or is it just a like send through? And then like, what are you actually saying on the video as like a thank you for the connection? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I have way more success not sending a message with my connection request. And I know, I feel like it's so 50-50. That's what I've heard. But I feel like if I don't send a message, then that's more time for me to do other outreach. So I don't send a message with the connection request. If they accept, I send them a message as soon as I see it come through. And it's a generic video. So it's just me, it's probably 20 seconds. And I say, hey, thanks so much for connecting. Really looking forward to following your content here on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out if you ever have any questions or you just want to chat about anything at all. Again, thanks so much for connecting. Like, looking forward to staying in touch.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then depending on how much they engage with my emails, I'll then follow up. Usually it's with a written message that says, hey, so-and-so, noticed you've been going back to my emails. Curious if I said anything particularly relevant or if I totally missed the mark. And so
and that's on LinkedIn, that message.
That's on LinkedIn. Okay. Yeah, rather than sending them another email, I'll go back and forth. Sometimes I'll send that in an email. Sometimes if a ton of people have opened it, I have this snippet that I use that it says, hey, so-and-so, noticed that you and maybe some others on your team had taken a look at my video. Curious if I said something particularly relevant or if I got so many views because I'm getting marked as spam. Hopefully it's the former. And I usually get a response on that one. So just really having fun with it. I mean, everyone's a human. Everyone has been through a lot the past couple of years. And I think I see some of the emails that I get from SDRs and BDRs, and I want to be more fun than that.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, I think if you treat it like it's mundane and like a robot, then you might have good open rates, but you're just going to get burnt out from it. And so you got to keep it loose. The last thing on the tactics side that I want to just mention is, you said a couple minutes ago how when you first started, I forget her name already, but you gave a shout out to her. as being the top performer, kind of like stole her sequences or borrowed her sequences, which I think all of us do early on. I remember I would follow around like the best reps when I first started and sit in on all their calls and say the exact same things they did. And it like kind of works, but then like it doesn't really fully work until you make it your own. And it's just like somewhere, at least for me, it was like about a year in where I started to like know enough about what I was talking about, where I felt confident and I was talking like me. And then all of a sudden, like things kind of took off. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. And so that's, I feel like the biggest kind of milestone to hit in a first year as a salesperson is like, once you are writing and talking like yourself and confident in what you're selling and in the conversations, like the sky's the limit from there. So for anyone that's in like, the early days, you want to get to that point as quickly as you can, for sure.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like that comes very naturally to me when I am sending an email or talking to someone on LinkedIn, but I get on the phone and I'm like,
Yeah.
what can I regurgitate right now? But another thing that helped me, especially coming from a non-tech background, was listening to recordings of top sellers in like discovery calls or demos or things like that. And I would literally just have Google Sheets up and I would do like stream of consciousness, writing phrases out as I heard them. And then if it sounded interesting to me, or if it sounded like something that maybe I would need to know what it was, and just hearing them talk about the product and hearing Mel talk about the product helped me put together my talk track. And I think helped me feel much more comfortable in speaking to what it is that we do.
Yeah, such a great tip. All right, I want to round this out with some rapid fire questions. Let people know a little bit more about you, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. First up, we are big learners on this podcast. I'm not sure if you're a reader or not, but if you are, I'd love to hear any books that you love, any books that have impacted you as a person, your career, any genre is fair game.
Yeah. So really, full disclosure, the only sales book I've read is Fanatical Prospecting, which was great. Loved it. But always looking to read more in that space. Another thing on the sales front that I listen to a lot is the Make It Happen Mondays. I love that podcast, which I know that's not a unique thing. But I'm looking at my bookshelf. There's one specific book that I feel like truly changed my life. Hold on.
Let's hold, please.
Hold, please. Okay. Yeah, it's You Deserve the Truth by Erica Williams Simon. And she talks a lot. Yeah, she talks a lot about changing the narrative of your own life as it relates to fear and dreams and money, your profession, in a way that is really easy to read and very actionable. And so it's definitely more female focused, I would say, but highly recommend it. She's fantastic.
Yeah, I love it. I feel like going back to what we were talking about with like someone's kind of foundational skill set versus like knowing Salesforce or knowing how to cold call. I've personally found that those types of, I haven't read that book, but those types of books that are more like self-help or personal development have helped me more in my career 10 times more than like a sales book. And no disrespect to Fanatical Prospecting, because that actually is a really good book, but 9 times out of 10, I'll take the self-help type book, especially early on.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, the more that you can apply those types of, that type of learning to your life outside of work, you'll see a benefit at work as well, and lead a more well-rounded life, I think, which, as you know, in sales is so important because it's so easy to get bogged down in when it's not going well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. What other ways do you like to learn? Like podcasts you listen to, people you follow on LinkedIn, blogs or newsletters, if you check those out, like anything else that's top of mind?
Yeah. Can you give me a minute? Because I'm going to look. I'm going to pull up my Spotify.
Yeah, it's all good. The beauty of a non-live podcast.
I know. Oh my God. If this was live, I don't think I'd be able to do it. Oh. So I do listen because of the persona that I sell to is a lot of sales enablement folks. So
Yeah.
any sales enablement or sales ops podcasts that I can listen to, and even just have it on in the background while I'm doing other things, kind of the same idea of that like stream of consciousness, writing and learning. I feel like if I have it on in the background, surely I'm absorbing something, even if I'm not actually intently listening to it. So
Mm-hmm.
I really like the Enablement Squad, the Sales Enablement Pro podcast, all of those. Those are really great.
Nice.
So I think depending on whatever your persona is, getting to really know them and listening to what it is that they're listening to, so you can speak to what it is that they're going through, what their pains are, what their initiatives might be, and what are the trends in the space.
Yep. 100%. What goes on in the headphones music wise?
Yeah, I listen to a ton of stuff. So my all-time favorite band is Smashing Pumpkins, which sometimes surprises people. They've been my favorite band since I was a kid, so I love them. I also listen to a lot of classical music just because that was a huge part of my life for so long, and I really enjoy it. And then a lot of if you've ever listened to it's the Crying on the Dance Floor Spotify playlist. It's a lot of like,
but I'm intrigued.
Yeah, a lot of Bob Moses and Rufus Du Sol and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
So
nice. Okay.
Yeah,
I like it. What's something that you like to do outside of work to kind of recharge?
Yeah, this is such a stereotypical Colorado person thing, but I try and hike by myself, me and my dog, at least once a weekend, especially usually on a Sunday morning, because I feel like it just clears my head and kind of gets me ready to take on the week, and reminds me to get out of my head a little bit. And there's a ton of just amazing trails out here in Colorado that are so close to Denver. We're so spoiled to live so close to them. So yeah, a lot of hiking.
That's been the biggest detriment from moving from California to Chicago is zero. There's no hiking, there's no hills, there's no mountains.
Yeah.
So I'm missing that, but yeah.
But you've got the lake.
Yeah. People keep telling me about the lake. It's cool. It's not a mountain to me, but that's a whole nother conversation. Are there any favorite quotes, mantras, philosophies, anything like that I don't know, that you really like or that you think about a lot or anything like that?
Yeah. There's a lot. Let me think. I feel like it's overused, but it's something that I feel like is really true, is I think it's Henry Ford, the whether you think you can or can't, you're right. And that's something that when I was having a really, really hard time when I was trying to figure out if I wanted to go to college as like a normal college experience or continue on this path of professional ballet, I had a lot of self-doubt about whether or not I could actually do it. And so my dad wrote me this really long handwritten letter. And at the end of the letter in huge, huge writing was that quote. And so that's something that always stands out to me when I feel like I'm not believing in myself.
That shout out to Mr. Buchanan. That's great.
Yeah. He's also a sales guy. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Nice. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Here's my last one for you. Who is someone that you want to see come on the Millennial Sales Podcast? But the caveat is that you have to help me get them on.
Oh gosh. You've interviewed so many people.
We could do a round two with people if we deem that they're worthy. So you can
a round two.
You don't have to. Yeah. Some people have come on twice.
Well, I'm going to say, and I don't think you've had this person on, our RVP of growth, Christian Schmidt, is probably, I'm biased and I haven't had that many managers, let's be honest, but he is pretty much the best manager on this planet. And he just has a really interesting take on sales and how to motivate people and how he operates as a manager. And so I think it would be really valuable for people to hear his take on that.
All right, Christian, you're on the prospecting list.
He better be listening. If he's not, I'm going to be mad at him.
I'm going to send him a connection request and then a video once he accepts. We'll see if that move works.
Yeah.
Morgan, this is a blast. I appreciate you coming on. First of all, if there's anything that we didn't get to, feel free to, jut in, and I'm happy to talk about it. Otherwise, would love to know like where people can reach out to you, connect with you, if they like what they heard, if they're looking to buy Spekit, or anything in between.
Yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I think I'm Morgan Buchanan 1, because Morgan Buchanan was already taken, which was very upsetting. Or they can shoot me an email. It's morgan.buchanan@spekit.co.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on, Morgan.
Thanks.